The sun cast long shadows across the barren earth, as Xavier gripped his hat against the relentless wind, staring at the small wooden cross marking his wife's grave. 3 years had passed since the fever took her, but the weight of her absence still pressed down on his shoulders like the heavy plow he pushed through unyielding soil day after day. Montana Territory, 1876. The promise of free land under the Homestead Act had drawn Isaac and his young bride west 5 years earlier. Now, at 32, he worked his wheat fields alone, the endless cycle of planting and harvesting becoming the only rhythm to his solitary existence. "I'm making do, Hannah," he whispered to the cross, his voice nearly lost in the whistle of prairie wind. "But I ain't gonna lie, it's getting harder." The 40 acres he'd claimed stretched before him, golden wheat stalks swaying, waiting for harvest. A modest success by any measure, but the backbreaking labor meant for two people now fell solely to him. Every morning began before dawn and ended long after sunset, leaving little time for anything but exhausted sleep. Isaac placed the small bundle of wildflowers at the base of the cross and headed back toward his cabin. The afternoon heat bore down mercilessly as he approached the small creek that cut through his property. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow, when an unfamiliar sight caught his eye. A woman knelt at the creek's edge, filling 2 large wooden buckets with water. Dark hair escaped from beneath a faded bonnet, and her simple calico dress was dusty from travel. A small wagon stood nearby, one wheel visibly damaged. Isaac hesitated. Visitors were rare this far from town. Rarer still were unaccompanied women. The woman sensed his presence and turned quickly, one hand reaching for something in her skirts, likely a small pistol. Smart, Isaac thought. A woman alone couldn't be too careful. "I mean no harm, madam," he called, keeping his distance and raising his hands slightly. "This is my land you're on, but you're welcome to the water." She studied him for a moment, wariness evident in her posture. "Thank you, sir. My wagon wheel broke about a mile back. I've been walking since morning." As Isaac drew closer, he noticed the exhaustion etched in her features. Despite the dust of travel, she was striking dark eyes that held both determination and fatigue, strong shoulders, and hands that spoke of someone accustomed to work. "Nearest town's Copper Creek, about 15 miles west," Isaac said, gesturing toward the horizon. "You're a fair piece from anywhere, miss." Sophia Grayson," she replied, straightening her spine. "And you are?" "Xavier. This is my homestead." He glanced at her damaged wagon. "That wheel won't get you far. Where you headed?" Sophia lifted her chin slightly. "Montana Falls. I have a position waiting as a schoolteacher." Isaac nodded, scratching his beard thoughtfully. "That's another 30 miles at least." He hesitated, weighing his words. "Miss Grayson, I don't mean to presume, but you won't make it before dark, and these parts aren't safe for traveling alone at night. I have a barn where you could shelter until morning. I can help fix that wheel tomorrow." Suspicion flashed across her face, and Isaac understood immediately. A woman alone had every reason to distrust a stranger's hospitality. "You'd be safer in the barn than out here," he added quickly. "I'll keep to the cabin. You have my word as a Christian man." Sophia regarded him silently, then nodded once. "I accept your offer, Mr. Xavier. Thank you." Isaac helped her retrieve the wagon, hitching his own horse to pull it the remaining distance to his homestead. As they walked, he observed Sophia from the corner of his eye. She carried herself with dignity, despite her obvious fatigue. The water buckets she insisted on carrying herself seemed to grow heavier with each step, but she never complained. "Allow me," he finally said, reaching for the buckets. "I can manage," she replied firmly. "I don't doubt it, Miss Grayson, but there's no sense in both of us having sore arms tomorrow." After a moment's hesitation, she relinquished the buckets. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, and Isaac was surprised by the calluses on her hands. This was no city woman unused to labor. His homestead came into view, a modest cabin built of hewn logs, a small barn, a chicken coop, and fields of wheat stretching beyond. It wasn't much compared to established farms back east, but Isaac felt a small surge of pride seeing it through a stranger's eyes. "It's a fine piece of land you have, Mr. Xavier," Sophia remarked, her gaze taking in the ripening wheat. Been here 5 years now. Took some doing to get it producing, but the soil's good. He paused. My wife and I came out from Pennsylvania in '71. Sophia glanced at him, noting the past tense. Your wife is. Past 3 years back, fever. The words came out clipped, matter of fact, though the pain behind them remained. I'm sorry for your loss, she said quietly. Isaac merely nodded, then gestured toward the barn. It's not much, but it's clean. I keep some hay in the loft that's fresh enough to sleep on. I'll bring you some supper once it's ready. The barn was simple but sturdy, built to withstand Montana winters. Sophia placed her small traveling case beside a ladder leading to the hayloft and began unpacking essential items. Isaac left her to settle in, returning to the cabin to prepare a meal. His cooking skills were basic: a stew of dried venison, potatoes, and the last of his garden carrots. As the pot simmered over the fire, Isaac glanced around his sparse home, suddenly aware of its shabbiness through the eyes of a visitor. The floor needed sweeping, dishes were stacked unwashed, and Hannah's mending basket still sat in the corner, untouched since her passing. When the stew was ready, he filled 2 bowls, cut thick slices of bread, and carried them to the barn. Sophia had washed the travel dust from her face and hands, her dark hair now neatly braided down her back. Without the bonnet, Isaac could see she was younger than he'd first thought, perhaps mid-20s. It's nothing fancy, he said, handing her a bowl, but it's hot. It smells wonderful. Thank you. She accepted the food gratefully. You're very kind to help a stranger, Isaac shrugged. Out here we help when we can. Tomorrow I'll see to that wheel and get you on your way. They ate in silence for a few moments before Sophia spoke again. Have you been working this land alone since your wife passed? Yes, madam, just me and 40 acres of wheat. He attempted a smile. And a dozen chickens who don't much care for my company. That's a heavy burden for one person. Isaac looked down at his bowl. It keeps me busy, less time for thinking. Sophia nodded in understanding. May I ask what brought you out west? Same as most, I suppose, land of our own. Back east, a man like me, son of a tenant farmer with no inheritance, had little chance of owning property. He paused. Hannah was keen on the adventure of it, said she'd rather face Indians and blizzards than spend another day watching rich folks' children play in gardens we'd never have. A small smile crossed Sophia's face. She sounds like a woman of spirit. That she was. For the first time in months, Isaac found himself speaking of Hannah without the crushing weight of grief. What about you, Miss Grayson? What brings a schoolteacher all the way to Montana territory? Sophia's expression grew guarded. A fresh start. I taught in Chicago for 3 years, but circumstances changed. When I saw the advertisement for a teacher in Montana Falls, it seemed like providence. Isaac sensed there was more to her story but didn't press. Everyone out west carried secrets of one kind or another. Well, Montana Falls will be glad to have you. Lots of children growing up with more knowledge of cattle branding than book reading. After they finished eating, Isaac bid her goodnight and returned to his cabin. Through the small window, he watched as lamplight glowed briefly in the barn before going dark. An unfamiliar feeling settled over him, awareness of another human presence nearby after years of solitude. Sleep came fitfully that night, his mind unexpectedly occupied with thoughts of dark eyes and a quiet strength that reminded him, painfully, of what he'd lost. Morning arrived with a gentle rain, the kind farmers welcomed during the dry Montana summer. Isaac rose at dawn, stoked the fire, and prepared a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush and coffee. He was halfway to the barn with Sophia's portion when he stopped short. She stood at the well, working the pump handle with steady, practiced motions. 2 buckets already sat filled beside her. Her hair was tied back beneath her bonnet, and she'd rolled up her sleeves against the morning dampness. Miss Grayson, he called, approaching, you didn't need to be up so early. Sophia turned, wiping her hands on her apron. Good morning, Mr. Xavier. I'm accustomed to early hours, and I thought I might make myself useful while you see to that wheel. Isaac handed her a steaming cup of coffee. I appreciate the thought, but you're my guest. A guest who's imposing on your hospitality, she countered. I was raised to believe in earning my keep. Before Isaac could respond, she continued, I noticed your garden could use some attention, and those chickens need feeding. If you'll point me toward the feed, I'll see to them while you have your breakfast." Her tone brooked no argument. Isaac found himself nodding, oddly comforted by her practical nature. "Feed's in the bin beside the coop. 2 handfuls is plenty." They worked separately through the morning, Isaac examining the broken wagon wheel while Sophia tended to tasks around the homestead. The damage was worse than he'd initially thought. The wheel's hub had split and 3 spokes were broken. "It's fixable," he told her when she brought him water midday, "but I'll need to replace some parts. I can ride into Copper Creek tomorrow for supplies." Disappointment crossed her face. "How long will the repairs take?" 3 days at least if the weather holds." Isaac wiped sweat from his brow. "I'm sorry, Miss Grayson. I know you're eager to reach Montana Falls." Sophia glanced toward the horizon where dark clouds gathered. "The school term doesn't start for another 2 weeks." She hesitated. "I just don't want to be a burden." "You're no burden," Isaac said simply. "In fact, I haven't eaten so well in months." She'd prepared a midday meal of biscuits and bacon, the first hot lunch Isaac had enjoyed in longer than he could remember. Usually he ate cold leftovers in the fields to save time. "Then I'll stay and help until the wagon's fixed," Sophia decided. "I noticed your wheat is nearly ready for harvest. Do you bring in hands to help?" Isaac shook his head. "Can't afford it. I manage alone." Disbelief colored her voice. 40 acres. It takes longer, but I get it done." Sophia studied him thoughtfully. "Well, Mr. Xavier, it seems Providence brought me here just in time for harvest. I'm stronger than I look, and I've helped with wheat before." Isaac started to protest, but the determined set of her jaw stopped him. "Miss Grayson, harvesting is brutal work in this heat. I couldn't ask, you didn't ask, I offered." She handed him a canteen. "Now drink your water before you collapse from heat stroke. You're no good to either of us unconscious." A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. There was something about her direct manner that reminded him painfully of Hannah, who'd never minced words either. That evening, rain pattered against the cabin roof as they sat at Isaac's small table, enjoying a stew Sophia had prepared from his meager pantry supplies. She'd insisted on sleeping in the cabin that night, with Isaac taking the barn after the leaky roof had soaked part of the hayloft. "Tell me about Montana Falls," Isaac said, breaking a comfortable silence. "I've never been there myself." Sophia's face brightened. "From what I understand, it's growing quickly. They've built a proper schoolhouse brick, not logs, and have nearly 30 children enrolled. The town council wrote that they're eager to bring civilized education to the frontier." She smiled slightly. "I suspect that means they have ambitious fathers wanting their sons prepared for college back east, and the daughters." The letter mentioned appropriate feminine accomplishments alongside basic studies. Sophia's tone remained neutral, though Isaac detected a hint of disapproval. "I intend to ensure the girls receive the same education as the boys, at least in the fundamental subjects." "You sound passionate about teaching. It's more than a profession to me." Sophia stared into her cup. "Education changes lives. I've seen it firsthand, children from the poorest circumstances discovering worlds within books, finding paths they never knew existed." Isaac nodded thoughtfully. "My schooling ended at 12, enough to read, write, and cipher. Sometimes I wonder how different things might have been with more learning." "It's never too late," Sophia said quietly. "If you've books here, I'd be happy to leave some for you when I go." The phrase "when I go" hung between them, a reminder that her presence was temporary. "That's kind of you." Isaac cleared his throat. "I should check on the animals before turning in. The rain makes the horses restless." Outside, the gentle rain had intensified, drumming against the cabin roof. Isaac stood under the small porch overhang, staring into the darkness. Something stirred in his chest, an unfamiliar feeling he couldn't quite name. Having another person in his home, sharing conversation over a meal, he'd forgotten how much he'd missed simple human connection. The next morning dawned clear and cool after the rain. Isaac rode to Copper Creek for wheel parts and supplies, leaving Sophia to tend the homestead. He found himself oddly anxious about leaving her alone, though she'd assured him she would be fine. "I have your rifle," she'd reminded him, "and I know how to use it." The small trading town was a half-day's ride away. As Isaac tied his horse outside the general store, he realized he was looking forward to returning home in a way he hadn't in years. Inside, Jacob Finch, the storekeeper, greeted him with surprise. Xavier, twice in 1 month must be a special occasion. Need parts for a wagon wheel, Isaac explained, handing over his list, and some extra supplies. Jacob raised an eyebrow at the items: coffee, sugar, a small bag of hard candies. Company coming, Isaac hesitated, just helping a traveler with a broken wagon. Must be some traveler, Jacob commented, gathering the requested items. Ain't seen you buy sugar since Hannah was alive. Isaac ignored the remark, but found himself adding a few more items to his purchase: a length of blue ribbon and a small bottle of rose-scented soap. Small luxuries he hadn't considered in years. The return journey seemed longer than usual, anticipation building as his homestead came into view. Smoke rose from the cabin chimney, and he could see Sophia in the garden, a basket on her arm as she gathered vegetables. She looked up at the sound of his approach, raising a hand in greeting. Something in his chest tightened at the sight. "Mr. Xavier," she called as he dismounted. "I hope your trip was successful." "Got everything we need," he replied, untying his purchases. "The wheel should be fixed by tomorrow evening." Was it his imagination, or did disappointment flicker across her face? "I've been checking your wheat," Sophia said, falling into step beside him. "Several sections are ready for harvest. We should start tomorrow." "Miss Grayson, I appreciate your offer, but nothing," she interrupted firmly. "You helped me when I needed it. Let me return the favor." Over the next 3 days, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Mornings began before dawn, with Sophia preparing breakfast while Isaac tended the animals. They worked the wheat fields until the midday heat became unbearable, then retreated to the shade where Isaac worked on the wagon wheel while Sophia mended clothing or preserved vegetables from the garden. Despite his initial protests, Isaac had to admit Sophia's help with the harvest was invaluable. She wielded a scythe with surprising skill, moving through the fields with determination. By the 3rd day, they had harvested nearly a quarter of his crop, far more than he could have managed alone in the same time. "Where did you learn to harvest wheat?" Isaac asked as they paused for water beneath the shade of a cottonwood tree. Sophia wiped sweat from her brow. "My grandfather's farm in Illinois. I spent summers there as a girl." She smiled at the memory. He believed girls should know practical skills alongside their books. He was a wise man, he was. Her expression grew wistful. "He died when I was 16. The farm was sold to pay his debts." Isaac studied her face, noting the sadness there. "Is that when you decided to become a teacher?" Sophia nodded. "It seemed the most practical choice for a woman needing to support herself. I attended the normal school in Chicago on scholarship. And now Montana." "Yes." Her gaze drifted toward the distant mountains. A new beginning. That evening, with the wagon wheel nearly repaired, a strange melancholy settled over the cabin. Sophia had prepared a special meal from their combined efforts: fresh bread, garden vegetables, and a rabbit Isaac had snared that morning. "The wheel will be ready tomorrow," Isaac said as they finished eating. Sophia nodded, her expression unreadable. "Thank you for all your help, Mr. Xavier." "I don't know what I would have done without your kindness." "Isaac," he said suddenly. "Please call me Isaac. After sharing field work and meals, Mr. Xavier seems too formal." A small smile touched her lips. "Then you must call me Sophia." "Sophia," he repeated, the name feeling somehow significant on his tongue. I want you to know how much I've appreciated your help these past days. This place hasn't felt so much like a home in a long time." Color rose in her cheeks. "I've enjoyed being here. Your land is beautiful." "It's hard land," Isaac admitted. "Beautiful, yes, but demanding. Sometimes I wonder if I was foolish to think I could manage it alone after Hannah died." "You've done remarkably well," Sophia said softly, "but no one should have to carry such a burden alone." Their eyes met across the table, something unspoken passing between them. Isaac felt a surge of emotion so unexpected it nearly took his breath away: longing, fear, hope all mingled together. The moment was broken by a distant rumble of thunder. Isaac cleared his throat. "Storm's coming." "I should secure the animals." Outside, lightning flashed across the darkening sky. The air felt heavy, electric with the approaching storm. Isaac worked quickly, ensuring the chickens were safely in their coop and the horses secured in the barn. Rain began falling in heavy drops as he made his way back to the cabin. Sophia stood at the window, watching the storm's approach. Lightning illuminated her profile for an instant, and Isaac was struck again by her quiet strength and grace. "Will the wheat be all right?" she asked as he closed the door behind him. "What we've harvested is safe in the barn. The rest will have to weather the storm," he replied, removing his wet coat. "These summer storms usually pass quickly." As if in defiance, thunder cracked directly overhead, making the cabin's windows rattle. Sophia jumped slightly, then laughed at her own reaction. "Not fond of storms?" Isaac asked, smiling. "Not when they shake the walls," she admitted. "In Chicago, I lived in a brick building. Somehow thunder seems more immediate out here." That's the truth of it. Everything's more immediate on the frontier, whether danger, beauty. Isaac stoked the fire, building it higher against the sudden chill. "First winter here, Hannah and I thought we might not survive. Blizzard lasted 3 days, temperatures so low the sap in the logs froze and cracked like gunshots." "How did you manage?" Huddled by the fire, took turns staying awake to keep it burning. He smiled at the memory. "Hannah read aloud from her Bible until she was hoarse, said if we were going to meet our Maker, we'd do it with scripture in our ears." Sophia settled into a chair by the fire. "She sounds remarkable." She was. Isaac surprised himself by continuing. "We met at a church social back in Pennsylvania. Her father owned the local mercantile. Mine was a tenant farmer on the Phillips estate. By all accounts, she was above my station, but Hannah never saw the world that way." Rain lashed against the windows as the storm intensified. "How did you come to teaching?" Isaac asked, changing the subject. "Beyond needing employment, I mean." Sophia's expression grew thoughtful. "I always loved learning. Books were my escape when life was difficult." She hesitated. "After my parents died typhoid, when I was 12, I was sent to live with an aunt in Chicago. She was strict. Books became my companions." "I'm sorry about your parents. It was a long time ago." Sophia stared into the fire. "Teaching gives purpose to knowledge. There's nothing quite like watching a child's face when they first understand something new, that moment when confusion transforms into comprehension." Isaac nodded. "I hope to send children to your school someday," he said without thinking, then flushed when he realized the implication. Sophia glanced at him, a question in her eyes that neither of them voiced. The storm raged through the night. Isaac made a pallet for himself near the door, insisting Sophia take the bed. Despite his exhaustion from days of harvesting, sleep eluded him. He lay awake, listening to the rain and occasional rumble of thunder, acutely aware of Sophia's presence just feet away. When he finally drifted off, Isaac dreamed of wheat fields and dark eyes, of laughter in his home and small hands gathering eggs from the chicken coop. Morning arrived with lingering showers and a humidity that promised another scorching day once the sun broke through. Isaac rose early, moving quietly to avoid waking Sophia. Outside, he surveyed the damage from the storm: a few fallen branches, some wheat flattened by the heavy rain, but nothing catastrophic. The wagon wheel was nearly complete. With a few hours' work, it would be ready for travel. The thought filled Isaac with an unexpected hollowness. He was securing the final spoke when Sophia approached, carrying a cup of coffee. Her hair was tied back simply, her sleeves already rolled up for the day's work. "The wheel looks good," she commented, handing him the coffee. "You're quite skilled with woodworking." "Necessity teaches many skills," he replied, accepting the cup gratefully. "It should be ready by noon. If you leave then, you can make it to Johnson's Station by nightfall. It's a safe place to rest before continuing to Montana Falls." Sophia nodded, her expression unreadable. "Thank you." She glanced toward the wheat fields. "But I hate to leave with so much harvest remaining. Perhaps I could stay another day or two to help." Hope flared in Isaac's chest, but he tamped it down. "That's generous, but you have obligations in Montana Falls. The school is expecting you." "Yes, of course." Sophia seemed to hesitate, then turned toward the cabin. "I'll prepare some food for your journey." The morning passed too quickly. Isaac finished the wheel while Sophia packed her few belongings and prepared provisions for the road. By midday, the wagon was repaired and loaded, ready for departure. They stood awkwardly beside it, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I can't thank you enough for everything," Sophia finally said. "Not just fixing the wheel, but the kindness you've shown me." "It was my pleasure," Isaac replied, meaning it more than he could express. The company was. He searched for the right word. "Welcome." Sophia smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "If you ever find yourself in Montana Falls, please call on me. I would be honored to welcome you as you welcomed me." "I will," Isaac promised, knowing even as he spoke that the likelihood was small. His farm demanded his presence, especially now with harvest underway. Sophia extended her hand. Isaac took it, feeling the strength in her grip, the calluses that matched his own. For a moment, neither let go. "Safe travels, Sophia Grayson," he said softly. "Goodbye, Isaac Xavier." She climbed onto the wagon seat and took up the reins. With a gentle click of her tongue, the horses began moving forward. Isaac stood watching as the wagon grew smaller in the distance, a strange emptiness expanding inside him with each step of the horses. Only when the wagon disappeared over the rise did he turn back to his fields, to the solitary life that awaited him. The next 3 days passed in a blur of physical exhaustion. Isaac threw himself into the harvest with single-minded determination, working from dawn until well after dusk. Without Sophia's help, progress was painfully slow, but the physical labor left him too tired to think, which was precisely what he wanted. On the 4th day after Sophia's departure, Isaac paused in his work, wiping sweat from his brow as he surveyed the remaining wheat. At his current pace, it would take another 2 weeks to bring in the harvest alone. He'd have to hire help from town, something he'd avoided due to the expense. As he contemplated this unwelcome necessity, a movement on the horizon caught his eye. A wagon approached along the same road Sophia had traveled days earlier. Isaac's heart leapt irrationally before he forced practical thought to return. Probably a peddler or a lost traveler seeking directions. He continued working, though his eyes frequently drifted toward the approaching wagon. As it drew closer, Isaac froze mid-swing, his scythe suspended in the air. He recognized the wagon. Setting aside his tool, Isaac strode toward the road, pulse quickening with each step. The wagon crested the small rise that led to his homestead, and there, handling the reins with confidence, sat Sophia Grayson. She pulled the horses to a stop when she saw him, a mixture of uncertainty and determination on her face. "Miss Grayson," Isaac called, closing the distance between them. "Is something wrong with the wheel again?" Sophia shook her head, her hands twisting the reins nervously. "No, the wheel is fine. She took a deep breath. "I made it to Montana Falls." Isaac's brow furrowed in confusion, and I discovered the position had been filled. Sophia met his gaze directly. "The town council decided they couldn't wait any longer and hired a man from Helena 2 days before I arrived." "I'm sorry to hear that," Isaac said sincerely. "What will you do now?" Sophia hesitated, then spoke with careful deliberation. "That depends entirely on you, Mr. Xavier." "On me?" "Yes." She smoothed her skirt, a gesture Isaac recognized as one of her nervous habits. "On my journey to Montana Falls, I had many hours to think, about teaching, about what I truly wanted for my future." She paused, gathering courage. "When I reached Montana Falls and found the position filled, I felt relief, because it gave me permission to consider another path, one I'd been contemplating since leaving your homestead." Hope began to rise in Isaac's chest, though he dared not give it voice. "I'm a good teacher," Sophia continued, "but I'm also a farmer's granddaughter. I know about wheat and gardens and preserving food for winter." Her voice grew stronger. "I know about building a life from the earth up. And I know what it means to find someone whose silence feels like conversation, whose presence feels like home." Isaac stepped closer to the wagon. "Sophia, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to stay, Isaac, here on this land." Her eyes never left his. "With you if you'll have me." For a moment, Isaac couldn't speak, overwhelmed by emotions he'd locked away for 3 long years. "I know it's sudden," Sophia rushed on, misinterpreting his silence, "and presumptuous. We've known each other only days, but sometimes," she faltered. "Sometimes life offers unexpected paths and wisdom lies in recognizing them." Isaac found his voice at last. "When you left, this place felt emptier than it ever had before, not just the extra pair of hands in the field or at the stove, but..." He searched for the right words. The light you brought back into this home, into my life." He moved to the side of the wagon and offered his hand. Sophia took it, allowing him to help her down. They stood facing each other, neither quite believing the moment was real. "I can't offer much," Isaac said quietly. "This land demands everything and forgives nothing. The winters are brutal and the work never ends." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Sophia replied, "or cold winters." "What about your teaching, your dreams?" A soft smile touched her lips. "Dreams change. There are children in Copper Creek who need education too. Perhaps someday, when we're more established, I could start a small school here." The word we hung between them, full of promise. "There's something else you should know," Isaac said, suddenly serious. "I never thought I'd marry again after Hannah died. Never thought I'd find room in my heart for anyone else." Sophia's expression grew guarded. "I understand. I would never expect to replace—" "No," Isaac interrupted gently. "What I'm trying to say is that meeting you has shown me I was wrong. The heart expands. Hannah will always be part of me, but—" He took both her hands in his. "I find myself imagining a future with you, Sophia Grayson, a shared life, children growing old together on this land." Tears glistened in Sophia's eyes. "That's what I want too." "Then stay," Isaac said simply. "Stay and build that future with me." Instead of answering with words, Sophia rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle, tentative at first, then deepening with shared emotion. When they finally parted, both were smiling through tears. "Is that a yes?" Isaac asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes," Sophia replied. "1,000 times yes." The weeks that followed were filled with work and planning. Together, they finished the wheat harvest in half the time it would have taken Isaac alone. Sophia's knowledge of preserving food proved invaluable as they prepared for the coming winter, canning vegetables and drying fruits. Word spread quickly through the scattered homesteads about Xavier's unexpected bride-to-be. Neighbors they rarely saw made excuses to visit, curious about the schoolteacher who had chosen farm life over Montana Falls. Pastor Miller from Copper Creek agreed to perform the ceremony at the homestead. Neither Isaac nor Sophia wanted to wait for spring, as was customary. Winter was approaching, and practical considerations as well as their growing feelings made a fall wedding sensible. On a clear October morning, with the first frost silvering the grass, Sophia Grayson became Sophia Xavier. The ceremony was simple, attended by a handful of neighbors and the storekeeper from Copper Creek, who closed his shop for the occasion. Sophia wore a dress of deep blue, not new, but freshly altered and adorned with the ribbon Isaac had purchased on that fateful trip to town. Isaac had shaved his beard and borrowed a proper suit coat from a neighbor, looking years younger without the weight of solitude etched into his features. "By the power vested in me," Pastor Miller pronounced, "I now declare you husband and wife. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Their kiss was witnessed by blue sky and golden fields, by mountains standing sentinel in the distance, and by a small wooden cross where Hannah rested, not forgotten, but now part of a larger story continuing beyond her own. That night, as husband and wife, they lay wrapped in each other's arms, the October chill kept at bay by the warmth they created together. Outside, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, but inside the cabin, a new life was already taking root. "Are you happy?" Isaac whispered into Sophia's hair, still amazed that she had chosen this life, chosen him. Sophia raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." She traced the lines of his face with gentle fingers. "This is where I belong, Isaac, right here with you." Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the Montana territory in deep snow by mid-November. The Xavier homestead stood strong against the biting winds and freezing temperatures, its occupants well prepared for the season's challenges. Inside the cabin, life took on a different rhythm. With the fields dormant under snow, Isaac turned his attention to long-neglected repairs and improvements. The cabin gained a new shelf for Sophia's small collection of books, a larger table built from wood Isaac had been saving, and a rocking chair positioned near the hearth. Sophia transformed the interior with simple touches: curtains made from flour sacks, braided rugs from fabric scraps, and arrangements of dried flowers and grasses she'd gathered before the first snow. The cabin that had been merely shelter for Isaac after Hannah's death became a home again under Sophia's care. In the evenings, they established a tradition that would sustain them through many winters to come. Sophia would read aloud by lamplight from her treasured collection of Dickens and Austen, from Isaac's family Bible, and from newspapers that arrived sporadically from Copper Creek. Isaac, whose own reading was slow and laborious, found himself transported by her voice, developing a love for literature he'd never known before. On the coldest nights, they shared stories of their pasts, filling in the details of lives lived before their paths crossed. Isaac spoke of his childhood in Pennsylvania, of his father's struggles as a tenant farmer, and of his decision to seek a different life in the West. Sophia revealed more about her years in Chicago, teaching children from the city's poorest neighborhoods while continuing her own education in evening classes. "I was engaged once," she confessed one night as they lay beside each other, the wind howling outside their snug cabin. "To another teacher at my school." Isaac turned to face her, surprised. "What happened?" Sophia's expression grew distant. "He wasn't who I thought he was." When the school board offered him a position as headmaster in a more prestigious district, he took it and married the superintendent's daughter shortly after. Isaac's arm tightened around her. "His loss, my gain," she smiled, nestling closer. "It was for the best. If not for that disappointment, I might never have answered the advertisement for Montana Falls, might never have broken a wheel on your land." "Providence," Isaac murmured, kissing her forehead. By January, their happiness expanded with news that brought both joy and trepidation. Sophia was expecting a child, due to arrive in late summer. "Are you certain?" Isaac asked, his voice catching as Sophia shared her suspicion. "As certain as any woman can be," she replied, a mixture of excitement and nervousness in her expression. "I've missed my monthly courses twice now, and I'm feeling changes in my body." Isaac gathered her into his arms, overwhelmed with emotion. The prospect of fatherhood, something he'd given up hope for after years alone, filled him with wonder and fear in equal measure. "A baby," he whispered, his hand resting gently on Sophia's still flat stomach. Our baby," she echoed, covering his hand with her own. That night, Isaac lay awake long after Sophia had fallen asleep, his mind racing with plans and worries. The cabin would need expansion before winter, a proper bedroom for privacy, space for a cradle. The coming harvest would be critical. They would need to sell enough wheat to purchase supplies for the baby and put aside reserves in case Sophia couldn't work the fields during her confinement. And beneath these practical concerns lay deeper fears. Montana Territory was no gentle place for bearing children. The nearest doctor was in Copper Creek, too far if complications arose. Isaac had witnessed Hannah's struggles with illness without proper medical care. The thought of Sophia facing childbirth under similar circumstances terrified him. As if sensing his thoughts, Sophia stirred in her sleep, curling closer to his warmth. Isaac pressed a kiss to her hair, making a silent vow to protect her and their child, whatever it took. Spring's arrival brought renewal to the land and fresh energy to the homestead. As soon as the ground thawed enough for planting, Isaac and Sophia worked side by side preparing the fields. Despite her advancing pregnancy, Sophia insisted on contributing, though Isaac was careful to assign her less strenuous tasks. "I'm with child, not made of glass," she often reminded him when he grew too protective. Nevertheless, Isaac hired a local boy, Thomas Wilkins, to help with the heaviest work. The 16-year-old son of a neighboring homesteader, Thomas was eager to earn extra money for his family and proved a capable worker. With the additional help, Isaac was able to plant more acreage than ever before. They added a vegetable garden twice the size of previous years, and Sophia began raising additional chickens, selling the extra eggs to travelers and neighbors. As Sophia's body changed with her advancing pregnancy, so too did their relationship deepen. Isaac found himself marveling at her strength and adaptability. The educated city teacher had transformed into a capable frontier wife without complaint, mastering new skills with determination. For her part, Sophia discovered reserves of physical endurance she hadn't known she possessed. The work was hard, certainly, but deeply satisfying in ways teaching had never been. Each evening, she collapsed into bed physically exhausted but content, especially when she caught Isaac watching her with undisguised admiration. By June, Sophia's pregnancy was unmistakable, her rounded belly a constant reminder of the life growing within her. She began preparing for the baby's arrival, sewing tiny garments from fabric purchased in Copper Creek and transforming a wooden crate into a cradle with Isaac's help. On a particularly hot July afternoon, as Sophia rested in the shade of the cabin porch, a wagon appeared on the horizon. Visitors were more common in summer, but still infrequent enough to cause interest. "Isaac," she called toward the barn where he was repairing harnesses. "Someone's coming." The wagon drew closer, revealing a middle-aged couple and what appeared to be their grown daughter. Strangers, not neighbors. Isaac joined Sophia on the porch, watching the approaching visitors with curiosity. "Wonder what brings them this way. That's not the road to Copper Creek." As the wagon reached their yard, the man at the reins called out a friendly greeting. "Hello there, might we trouble you for some water? Our horses are feeling the heat something fierce." "Of course," Isaac replied, stepping forward. "There's a well just there. Welcome to our homestead." The man descended from the wagon, helping his wife and daughter down after him. He was solidly built, with the weathered look of someone who worked outdoors, though his clothes suggested more prosperity than most homesteaders. "Much obliged. Name's George Tillman. This is my wife Martha and our daughter Rebecca." Isaac made the introductions on their side, noticing how the visitors' eyes widened slightly at Sophia's evident pregnancy. "We're heading to Montana Falls," George explained as Isaac helped him water the horses. "Taking Rebecca to teach at the new school there." Sophia, who had been exchanging pleasantries with Martha, looked up sharply. "Montana Falls? You're the new teacher," Rebecca Tillman, a slender young woman with a serious expression, nodded. "Yes, madam, this will be my first position." "I was originally hired for that post," Sophia said with a smile, "but as you can see, my circumstances changed rather dramatically." Understanding dawned on the Tillmans' faces. "You're the teacher from Chicago," Martha exclaimed. The town council mentioned there had been some confusion about the position. They were quite distressed when you didn't arrive as expected. "I did arrive," Sophia clarified, "but by then they'd already hired someone else. A man from Helena, I was told," George nodded. "That's right. Mr. Prescott. But he left after just 3 months, couldn't handle the frontier children, apparently. The council's been searching for a replacement ever since. When they heard Rebecca had training from a teacher's college in St. Louis, they offered her the position immediately." Isaac exchanged a glance with Sophia, both thinking the same thing. How differently their lives might have unfolded if Mr. Prescott had never taken the Montana Falls position. The Tillmans accepted an invitation to rest in the shade and share a meal before continuing their journey. As the women prepared food in the cabin, George admired Isaac's wheat fields. "Fine-looking crop," he commented. "You managing all this yourself?" "My wife helps considerably," Isaac replied, "though less now with the baby coming. And I have a local boy who works part-time." George nodded appreciatively. "You've done well here. How long have you had the place?" "Coming up on 6 years now. Came out under the Homestead Act in '71. Tough going at first," Isaac smiled wryly. "You could say that. First winter nearly broke us. Then we lost most of our seed to weevils the second year. After that came grasshoppers, drought, and more winters. But you stayed. We stayed." Isaac didn't correct the assumption that he and Sophia had been together from the beginning. The truth was more complicated than he cared to explain to a stranger. Over the simple meal of bread, cheese, and garden vegetables, conversation flowed easily. Rebecca Tillman proved to be well-educated and passionate about teaching, reminding Isaac of Sophia when they'd first met. "Have you taught before, Miss Tillman?" Sophia asked. "Only as an assistant at my mother's small school in Missouri," Rebecca admitted. "This will be my first classroom of my own. I admit I'm rather nervous about it." Sophia's expression softened. "The children of Montana Falls are fortunate to have a dedicated teacher. If you'd like, I have some materials and lesson plans from my years teaching in Chicago. They might be helpful as you begin." Rebecca's face lit up. "That would be wonderful, Mrs. Xavier. Thank you." As the afternoon progressed, Isaac noticed Sophia growing increasingly quiet, her hand occasionally resting on her belly with a slight grimace. When she excused herself briefly, he followed her inside the cabin. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Sophia nodded, though her expression was strained. "Just some discomfort. The baby's been active today." Isaac studied her face with concern. "Perhaps you should rest. I can see to our guests." "I'm fine, truly," she insisted, straightening her shoulders. "Just the heat, I think." Though unconvinced, Isaac didn't press the issue. Sophia had proven remarkably resilient throughout her pregnancy, and he'd learned to trust her judgment about her own condition. They bid farewell to the Tillmans as the afternoon began to wane, sending them on their way with fresh water, some vegetables from the garden, and a packet of teaching materials for Rebecca. As the wagon disappeared down the road, Sophia leaned against Isaac, suddenly allowing her exhaustion to show. "Let's get you inside," he said, supporting her weight as they walked toward the cabin. "You've done too much today." "It was nice, though," Sophia murmured. Having visitors, sharing a meal, makes the homestead feel more connected to the world. Inside, Isaac helped her settle onto their bed, removing her shoes and bringing cool water. Sophia accepted his attentions with a grateful smile, though discomfort still showed in the tightness around her eyes. "Meeting Rebecca made me think," she said as Isaac sat beside her, "about teaching again someday." "When you're ready," he assured her. "There's no rush." Sophia nodded, her hand moving in slow circles over her rounded belly. "I know, this little one will be education enough for a while." She winced suddenly, her breath catching. Isaac leaned forward, alarmed. "Sophia, it's nothing," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Just," she broke off as another spasm visibly passed through her. "Oh, the baby?" Isaac asked, his heart beginning to race. "Is it coming?" Sophia took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I think it might be, but it's too early. Almost a month too early." Fear gripped Isaac's chest. Early babies were dangerous. He'd seen it happen to neighbors, with devastating results. The nearest midwife was in Copper Creek, hours away even by fast horse. "I'll ride for Mrs. Jennings," he said, referring to the experienced midwife. "Thomas can stay with you until I return." Sophia grabbed his hand as another pain came. "There's no time," she gasped. "These pains are coming too quickly." Panic threatened to overwhelm Isaac, but he forced it down. Sophia needed him calm and focused. "Then we'll manage ourselves," he said with more confidence than he felt. "Tell me what to do." The next hours passed in a blur of fear and determination. Sophia's labor progressed rapidly, her body efficient even in this new experience. Isaac boiled water, gathered clean linens, and supported his wife through increasingly intense contractions, all the while praying silently for her safety and that of their child. As darkness fell, Sophia's pains reached their peak. Isaac held her hand, wiping her brow with cool cloths and offering what comfort he could. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her as she fought through another contraction. "You can do this, Sophia, you and our baby both." Her eyes met his, filled with both pain and resolve. "Together," she whispered. "We do this together." Shortly after midnight, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the cabin and their hearts. Though small from her early arrival, she was perfectly formed, with a cap of dark hair and eyes that, when briefly opened, seemed already to hold wisdom beyond her minutes of life. "She's beautiful," Isaac breathed, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he placed the swaddled infant in Sophia's arms. "Just like her mother." Sophia gazed down at their daughter with wonder. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." They named her Hannah Elizabeth Xavier Hannah, for the woman whose absence had first brought them together, Elizabeth for Sophia's mother. Though exhausted from the birth, Sophia insisted on nursing the baby immediately, instinctively knowing the importance of that first feeding for a child born early. Isaac watched his wife and daughter with overwhelming love and gratitude. In that moment, the hardships of frontier life, the isolation, the physical demands, the constant struggle against nature's whims all seemed worthwhile. This small family was what he had been working for all along, even when he hadn't known it. As dawn broke over the homestead, casting golden light through the cabin windows, Xavier sat beside his sleeping wife and newborn daughter, his heart fuller than he had ever imagined possible. From Hannah's death had come a grief he thought would never end. Yet here, in this moment, that grief had transformed into something new, not forgotten, but woven into the fabric of a life continuing, expanding, flourishing. Outside, the wheat fields swayed in the morning breeze, nearly ready for harvest. The cycle of planting and reaping, of endings and beginnings, continued. And within those cycles, Isaac had found his place again, not alone this time, but with Sophia beside him, carrying water when the load grew too heavy, sharing both burden and joy as they built their life together. 2 years passed, bringing changes to the Xavier homestead and family. Hannah Elizabeth, or Ellie as they called her, grew from a tiny, delicate newborn into a sturdy, curious toddler with her mother's dark eyes and her father's determined spirit. At 22 months, she followed Isaac everywhere, helping with chores and chattering in an increasingly complex mixture of real words and invented language. The homestead itself had expanded significantly. With profits from 2 successful wheat harvests, Isaac had added a proper bedroom to the cabin, a larger barn, and a root cellar that Sophia filled with preserved vegetables and fruits. They'd increased their livestock to include 6 milk cows and a small flock of sheep, diversifying their income beyond wheat alone. Most significantly, Sophia had begun teaching again, not in a formal school, but in their own home. Word had spread through the scattered homesteads that a qualified teacher was available, and several families now sent their children to the Xavier farm 3 days a week for lessons. The arrangement allowed Sophia to balance her passion for education with her responsibilities to farm and family. On a bright spring morning, Sophia stood at the stove preparing breakfast, her body showing the early signs of their second child, due in late autumn. Ellie sat on the floor nearby, carefully arranging wooden blocks Isaac had carved for her last Christmas. "Papa horse," the little girl announced, holding up a block to show her mother. "That's right, sweetheart," Sophia replied with a smile. "Papa's taking care of the horses this morning." As if summoned by mention of him, Isaac appeared at the door, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Sophia, there's someone here to see you." Sophia turned, curious. It was too early for her students to arrive. "Who is it?" A man from Montana Falls says his name is Edward Jenkins from the town council. Surprise crossed Sophia's face. Montana Falls was nearly 40 miles away, and she had had no contact with the town since meeting Rebecca Tillman 2 years earlier. "Show him in," she said, quickly removing her apron and smoothing her hair. Isaac nodded, disappearing briefly before returning with a well-dressed man in his 50s. Edward Jenkins had the prosperous look of a successful businessman, his clothes finer than typical frontier wear. "Mrs. Xavier," he greeted her with a small bow. "Thank you for receiving me." "I apologize for arriving unannounced." "You're welcome in our home, Mr. Jenkins," Sophia replied, gesturing toward the table. "Please sit. Would you care for coffee and breakfast? It's just ready." The man accepted gratefully, complimenting the simple but hearty meal of hot cakes, eggs, and bacon. Ellie watched the stranger with wide-eyed curiosity from her place on Isaac's lap, occasionally hiding her face in her father's shirt when Jenkins looked her way. "You have a beautiful daughter," Jenkins commented, "and a fine homestead. You've clearly prospered here." "We've been blessed," Isaac acknowledged, his arm protectively around Ellie, "but I suspect you didn't travel 40 miles to admire our farm, Mr. Jenkins." The man smiled slightly. "Direct, like most frontiersmen, I appreciate that." He set down his coffee cup and turned to Sophia. "Mrs. Xavier, I've come on behalf of the Montana Falls Town Council with a proposition." Sophia raised an eyebrow, exchanging a quick glance with Isaac. "What sort of proposition?" "As you may know, Miss Tillman has been teaching at our school for the past 2 years. She's done admirably, but circumstances have changed. She's recently become engaged to the son of our town's founder and will be leaving her position at the end of this term." Jenkins leaned forward slightly. The council has authorized me to offer you the teaching position, Mrs. Xavier. We remember your qualifications from your original application, and by all accounts, the informal school you've established here has been quite successful. Sophia sat very still, processing this unexpected offer. I'm flattered, Mr. Jenkins, but as you can see, my life has taken a different direction. We understand you have family responsibilities, Jenkins continued smoothly. That's why the council is prepared to offer not just the teaching position, but housing for your family in town. A proper house, not just rooms at the boarding house, and your husband could continue farming. There's good land available just outside town. Isaac's expression remained carefully neutral, though Sophia could read the tension in his shoulders. This was no small offer. Montana Falls was growing rapidly. With amenities they lacked on their isolated homestead, a doctor, regular supplies, potential for greater prosperity. Additionally, Jenkins added, the school now has 43 students enrolled for the coming year. The salary we're offering reflects that growth significantly more than the original position paid. That's very generous, Sophia said carefully, but this is our home. We've built it together from nothing. Jenkins nodded understandingly. Of course, I don't expect an immediate answer. Discuss it with your husband. Consider what's best for your family. He glanced at Ellie, then at Sophia's slightly rounded middle, including your growing family. After Jenkins departed with a promise to return in a week for their answer, silence filled the cabin. Ellie, sensing the change in atmosphere, slipped from Isaac's lap to resume playing with her blocks. You should take it, Isaac said finally, his voice quiet but firm. Sophia looked at him sharply. What? The position in Montana Falls, you should take it. His eyes met hers across the table. It's what you trained for, what you love, and there would be advantages for all of us. Isaac Xavier, Sophia said, her tone somewhere between disbelief and indignation. Are you trying to get rid of me? A smile tugged at his lips despite the seriousness of the moment. Never. But I want what's best for you, for our children. He reached across the table to take her hand. Ellie would have proper schooling as she grows, the new baby would have a doctor nearby, and you'd be doing what you were meant to do. Sophia squeezed his hand. What I was meant to do is right here. Teaching, yes, but also building this life with you. She looked around the cabin at the evidence of their shared work, their growing prosperity, the home they'd created together. We've put everything into this land, she continued. Our sweat, our hopes, I won't abandon it now. It wouldn't be abandonment, Isaac argued gently. Just a change in direction. We could have a good life in Montana Falls. Sophia studied his face. Is that what you want, to leave here? Isaac was silent for a long moment. What I want, he finally said, is for you to be happy. If teaching in a proper school again would make you happy, then I'm willing to start over. Tears filled Sophia's eyes at the selflessness of his offer. Rising from her chair, she moved around the table to sit on his lap, much as Ellie had done earlier. His arms came around her automatically, one hand resting on the small swell of her belly. Isaac Xavier, she said softly, framing his face with her hands. Don't you understand yet? My happiness isn't in a schoolhouse in Montana Falls or Chicago or anywhere else. It's here with you and Ellie and this little one. She guided his hand in a gentle circle over her stomach. This is where I chose to be, and I've never regretted that choice for a single day. Isaac's eyes searched hers. You're certain it's a significant opportunity? I'm certain, Sophia confirmed. Besides, I already have a school right here. It may be smaller and the building might be our front room instead of brick, but the work is just as meaningful. The tension in Isaac's shoulders visibly eased. I would have gone, he said, for you. But I'm glad we're staying. Sophia kissed him softly. This is our home. We built it together and we'll keep building it, adding rooms as our family grows, expanding the school as more children come. This land is part of us now. When Edward Jenkins returned the following week, Sophia delivered their decision with confidence. Though clearly disappointed, the councilman accepted their choice graciously, extending an open invitation should they ever reconsider. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the wheat fields gold, Ellie sleeping peacefully in Sophia's arms, Isaac reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 years ago, I couldn't imagine a future beyond the next harvest, he said quietly. Now I can hardly remember what life was like before you broke that wagon wheel on my land." Sophia leaned against his shoulder, her free hand finding his. "Providence," she murmured, echoing the word he'd used on their first winter night together. "Providence indeed," Isaac agreed, thinking of all the circumstances that had aligned to bring them together: Hannah's death, Sophia's journey west, a broken wagon wheel, a position filled too soon in Montana Falls. From such beginnings, grief and disappointment, chance meetings and uncertain futures, they had built something neither could have anticipated. Not just a farm or a family, but a shared purpose, a life enriched by each other's strengths. As darkness settled over the Montana prairie, stars appearing one by one in the vast sky above, Xavier silently thanked God for broken wagon wheels and strong women who carried water when the load grew too heavy, for second chances and new beginnings, for the wife beside him and the children who would carry their legacy forward. And as the first cool breeze of evening whispered through the wheat, promising another abundant harvest to come, Isaac knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be, not alone anymore, but surrounded by the family that had grown from the most unexpected of meetings on a dusty Montana road. In the decade that followed, the Xavier homestead flourished beyond what either Isaac or Sophia could have imagined during those early days together. Their family grew to include 4 children: Ellie, followed by Samuel, then twin girls they named Grace and Faith, all raised amid wheat fields and open skies, their education divided between books and the practical knowledge of frontier life. The small school Sophia had begun in their front room evolved into a proper schoolhouse built on the edge of their property, serving not just their own children, but those from a dozen surrounding homesteads. Isaac added rooms to their cabin as needed, eventually creating a comfortable home that, while still humble by Eastern standards, represented prosperity on the frontier. Through blizzards and droughts, through abundant harvests and lean years, through illness and health, Isaac and Sophia Xavier faced life's challenges together. The widowed cowboy who had once tended his fields alone, and the woman who had first appeared at his creek carrying water buckets, had found in each other not just help for their daily burdens, but a love that continued to deepen with passing seasons. On their 10th anniversary, as they stood together watching their children play beneath the same cottonwood tree where they had once shared water during their first harvest together, Isaac turned to his wife with eyes that still held wonder at the life they'd built. "10 years ago, I thought my future was written," he said, his arm around her waist. "Work the land alone until I couldn't anymore, then join Hannah in that cemetery plot. But you changed everything, Sophia Xavier." Sophia leaned into his embrace, her dark hair now threaded with silver that caught the afternoon light. "We changed everything together," she corrected gently. "That's what love does, it transforms burdens into shared purpose." Isaac smiled, watching as Samuel helped his younger sisters balance on a fallen log, Ellie supervising with the seriousness of eldest siblings everywhere. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you'd made it to Montana Falls as planned, if that wheel hadn't broken?" "Never," Sophia replied without hesitation. "Some things are meant to be, Isaac. I believe that with all my heart." In the distance, the wheat fields swayed gold and ready for harvest, a testament to years of shared labor and perseverance. The homestead that had once been a place of solitude and grief now bustled with life and purpose, children's laughter, the rhythm of daily work, the quiet moments of connection that sustained them through each changing season. "So do I," Isaac agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "So do I."